What's up, y'all? Today we got a video going over how you can integrate Warmind cells into your Solar 3.0 builds. Today we'll be doubling down on explosions, so there's a handful of mods that we'll be combining. Global Reach is a good mod that I recommend for any Warmind cell build. It just increases the area of effect or the range of your Warmind cells and all their effects. Grasp of the Warmind is another mod that we'll be using today. This allows us to pick up the Warmind cell and throw it towards an enemy with highly aggressive tracking. It'll often stick to an enemy, which you can then shoot the Warmind cell with a adaptive frame sniper, which will take Warmind cells out in one shot as long as you're not using cellular suppression. This just allows you to pick when and where the Warmind cell will go off. Another mod we'll be using today is Wrath of Rasputin. This allows us to spawn Warmind cells using solar splash damage, which can be anything from our solar abilities, an ignition, a solar grenade launcher, rocket launcher, or something similar. I tested explosive payload and incandescent weapons. Although they can work, they are incredibly inconsistent when it comes to spawning Warmind cells. Another mod that we'll be using today is Rage of the Warmind. This adds solar damage to the explosions of our Warmind cells, which in turn allows the explosions of our Warmind cells to then activate Wrath of Rasputin. If you plan on using any of these Warmind cell builds in higher end content such as Legend, Master, Lost Sectors, or Grandmaster Nightfalls, or anything where you are under leveled, I suggest replacing Rage of the Warmind with cellular suppression, because in those activities where you are under leveled, you're not going to get very much benefit out of Rage of the Warmind, because the explosions of Warmind cells will not be getting very many kills. But if you replace this with cellular suppression, by shooting the Warmind cell, you'll be able to cause essentially like a void pulse. It's suppression, but it's best to think of it as like a blinding effect. So like if you've ever used a blinding grenade launcher, this essentially does the same thing. I don't believe the duration is the same, but you can activate this multiple times before a Warmind cell disappears. And if you use Warmind's longevity, if you can fit this anywhere in your build, you'll be able to activate cellular suppression even more often. And combining this with Grasp of the Warmind, you can pick up a Warmind cell and throw it into the middle of a group of enemies and then immediately blind all of them. There was one other mod I had an idea for. I was going to use it on my warlock to kind of lean back into the support role, but because I don't have it and Ada1 sells random mods every day, there's no telling when she'll be selling Fireteam Medic again. But if you have this, destroying it creates a burst of healing for you and your allies, which can be helpful, especially in the 100 resilience meta right now. It can be used to save yourself. For my weapon, I prefer to use an adaptive frame sniper to destroy the Warmind cells, because it only takes one shot, and this will allow you to set off the Warmind cell from across the map. For my primary weapon, I run the Aikilos SMG just because it is my preferred weapon out of the Aikilos and Seraph family. For your primary though, you could run any other Seraph or Aikilos weapon, like the Aikilos hand cannon. This one I use in a Lucky Pants build that I put together a while back. If you wanted to run a special weapon, there's also the 7 Seraph shotgun, the Aikilos shotgun. There's also an Aikilos sniper rifle. There's also the 7 Seraph sidearm. In the kinetic slot, we also have the 7th Seraph Carbine and the 7th Seraph Officer Revolver. In our heavy slot, there is the 7th Seraph Saw, which can roll with things like auto-loading Vorpal or Clown Cartridge and firing line. As I mentioned earlier, you can use any Ikilos or Seraph weapon in combination with any Warmind cell mod to spawn the Warmind cells. So on my Hunter, I'm using Caliban's Hand. This allows us to easily get ignitions over and over again. All we have to do is get a kill with our proximity knife. And the explosion of the proximity knife can spawn a Warmind cell. The ignition that a kill causes can spawn Warmind cells. So for a subclass, I'm running Blade Barrage because it's my preferred PvE super. It's just fire and forget. There's not much to it. It's pretty easy to get good damage out of it. Golden Gun requires a little bit more setup to do good DPS in my opinion. But maybe there's a build out there that's easy to use and I just don't know about it yet. I run Gambler's Dodge so that if I miss my knife or it doesn't get a kill, I can easily get it back. Triple Jump, this is all personal preference. Proximity Knife is required for the Caliban's Hand build. I prefer Healing Grenade because this will help me get out of a sticky situation easily. Knock 'em down is necessary for this build. That way you get your melee immediately refunded every time you get a kill with the throwing knife. On Your Mark is my preferred solar aspect because it gives 3 fragment slots. I also like the handling and reload speed increase. It reminds me a lot of the old Heart of the Pack buff. For my fragments, I'm running Ember of Torches. This is necessary for the Caliban's Hand combination. That way you get unlimited knives. Ember of Torches plus Knock 'em down is how you're able to repeatedly chain melees as long as you're getting kills with them. Ember of Ashes is on here from the previous season where you could easily chain ignitions. This one you could actually probably swap out. Whenever I started making this video, all I did was go into Dim and apply one of my old Solar 3.0 builds, and then I replaced the combat style mods with Warmind cell mods. So it's pretty easy to integrate these mods into your already existing builds. But since we're not trying to chain ignitions now, you can probably replace Ember of Ashes for something else that you might prefer. I use Ember of Eruption. It's pretty self-explanatory. The more enemies you can catch with that explosion, the quicker and easier it'll be to spawn Warmind cells. I'm running Ember of Blistering, specifically just to ensure I've got that healing grenade at almost all times. If you take out a very large group of enemies with a solar ignition, you'll get almost your entire grenade back instantly. This is another mod that was primarily put in this build for chaining ignitions during the season when Solar 3.0 was introduced. So if you don't need the stats or you want to put something else here, you can. The only things I believe that are necessary for the Caliban's Hand build when you plan on using Warmind cells with it in the way that I'll be showing in this video would be the proximity knife, Knock 'em down, Ember of Torches, and Ember of Eruption. Like I said before, I use Ember of Blistering just so I get my grenade more often, and it makes it much easier to stay alive whenever I don't have to worry about whether or not my grenade is on cooldown.
Alright, and now for the Titan.
For my subclass, the super is entirely personal preference. Run whatever you want here. I do believe that you can fairly easily spawn some Warmind cells by getting kills with Hammer of Soul. So, again, for the barricade, that's also personal preference. Neither one of these are going to help you in spawning Warmind cells. Same with the jump. So for my melee ability, I prefer to use Hammer Strike whenever I'm trying to cause ignitions. Because anytime you kill an enemy with this melee ability, they will ignite and cause an explosion. I'm running the Healing Grenade again. Same utility as it was on the Hunter class. It is just useful for getting out of sticky situations. For aspects, I'm running Soul Invictus and Roaring Flames. However, if you want to run Consecration, that is probably perfectly fine if that is your style of build on the Solar Titan. You can use just about whatever you want with this selection of mods as long as you're applying solar splash damage or using solar splash damage in some way to kill enemies. For my fragments on the Titan, I've got Ember of Eruption for that increased area of effect again. I've got Ember of Blistering for that free grenade energy, same as I was on the Hunter. Ember of Char here, I believe this is actually here for stats. No, actually, no. Okay, so Ember of Char is here to spread Scorch through our ignitions. And the reason we want to do that on this build is because we're also using Ember of Searing. That way, defeating a scorched target grants melee energy. So, causing an ignition spreads Scorch to a large area, and then defeating enemies in that area that were not killed by the initial explosion refunds melee energy, allowing us to get another Hammer Strike off in a short period of time. Let's see how this goes. I don't really like the way Warlock version of it turned out. So many solar grenades. How are you even... Do the Warmind cells even matter? Like, really? Okay, now I can see one. Hey, look, another one spawned. Like I said, aggressive tracking. See where that one goes. Yep, it just stuck one in the noggin too.